Hi everyone, and welcome to my channel where I basically just sit in my plant room in my comfy clothes and talk about everything plants. I know my first two videos didn't really have the best sound quality, but I've got a little microphone now, so I'm learning, you guys, so please stick with me. I'm definitely going to end up redoing those first two videos, but for today I want to talk about the top 10 plant tips that I wish someone would have told me sooner. And also, like I said, I am still learning, so I don't have one of those fancy cute intros yet. So we're just going to go ahead and roll right into things, okay? Shall we? All right, thanks. Plant tip number one is stop moving your plant constantly. And I really need to take my own advice on that one. It's so hard to leave it in the same spot because I don't know, you'll put it somewhere and then it just doesn't feel right after a couple days. And it takes, I don't know, I feel like it takes a few spots to really find the perfect spot for each one. I literally just got done rearranging everything in my plant room a couple of days ago. So I really have no room to talk on that one, but it is really important because the plant really needs to acclimate. I mean, if you're moving it around within the same room, it's usually fine unless you're making a drastic change, like moving it from my window back over here to the shelf or something. That would probably that would throw my plant off. Yeah, definitely try avoiding it from room to room. That's usually when things can really throw your plant way off because the humidity might be way different, the temperature might be way different depending on if it's a different facing window. Like this one here is a west facing window and the other ones aren't. So that would make a really big difference for most of my plants. So it really just depends on what you have and where you're moving it to. But yeah, keep that in mind. I say that because I literally used to move my plants from room to room because I couldn't decide where I wanted them to be. Yeah, just give your new plants a few weeks to get used to their home. Now, moving into plant tip number two. Now, this one's not as personal to me anymore because I don't really use soil anymore. I've pretty much completely switched to leca, which are these little clay balls that allow the roots to still get oxygen and grow throughout them. So I've really enjoyed that. But whenever I first started, I didn't know anything about leca. And of course, I was using soil. I didn't know anything about soil either. And I was doing everything all wrong. So I wish I would have known that you can't just go buy a bag from Walmart or Home Depot or wherever, or Lowe's. I know people hate Home Depot right now. I do too, obviously, but sometimes they have really good plants. Anyway, back on track. Yeah, whenever I very first started, I thought that I could just go to the store, buy a bag of soil, and throw a plant in it, and that's all it needed. No, no, I learned the hard way that you have to mix a bunch of stuff with it. And I'm sure most of you know that, but if you're a complete beginner and you're seeing this, or maybe you're thinking about getting into plants and you're seeing this first, you definitely want to get other things to mix with the soil to make it chunky, they say, to where there's oxygen and airflow throughout the soil for the roots to not suffocate. Because if that happens, then you'll basically get root rot and your plant will die. What I used was perlite, and I would use orchid bark and then some kind of other soil, like a regular bag of soil. And then I would also get perlite and organic, or not organic, orchid bark, and mix it all together and pot my plants in that. But as some of you may know, I had terrible experiences with all kinds of pests. So I eventually did away with that. And yeah, that's a different story. So yeah, there are companies, mostly online. I'm pretty sure I really haven't seen one in store. I'm sure it exists. But anyway, there are some that sell pre-mixed soil that is ready to just throw a plant in, that they've basically already put all the stuff in it to make it chunky. That way it's not too dense for your plant to suffocate and get root rot in. Sorry, my foot's falling asleep. But yeah, I've never seen those at Walmart or anything. They're a little bit pricier, but at the same time, they're technically not, because once you buy those multiple different products, it probably comes out to about the same price anyway, and less hassle, less work. So it's really worth it if that's the route you're going. I know people sell them on TikTok Shop, Etsy, maybe Amazon has some. Yeah, I did away with soil pretty quick, so I'm not exactly sure where to buy those, but I do know they exist if that's something you're interested in, if you don't feel like trying to do your own ratios. I know the ratios aren't too bad though. It really just kind of depends on what you're using. Usually it's kind of equal parts of each thing, usually. I'm actually not 100% sure on that, so don't quote me on that one. Anyway, I'm gonna move on from the soil stuff. That's not really my specialty, but definitely a tip that I wish I would have known whenever I first got started. All right, the third thing that I wish I would have known whenever I first got into plants is that you definitely don't need to fertilize them as often as most of your labels will tell you to. I mean, maybe with some you can. I don't know. I know I can't with any of the ones that I have so far, or at least I shouldn't. You really only want to fertilize during active growth, and honestly, I usually dilute my water a little bit more than the label actually suggests anyway. So, and I do that because if you don't, it creates a lot of salt buildup and can burn the roots of your plant too. So So yeah, apparently our plants don't need a protein shake every week. Who would have thought? Tip number 4. This one really hits close to home. I made this mistake a lot and nobody warned me. Um, the bigger the pot does not mean the bigger the plant or the faster it'll grow. It probably just means that the plant will or the pot will hold too much moisture and either rot the roots or suffocate it or just, kill it altogether immediately was what pretty much happened to mine. First of all, you really don't want to repot your plant until the roots are really starting to take over the original one. And I guess it's kind of hard to tell unless you're using clear pot. So I guess another tip would be to use the nursery pot or plant it in a clear pot as like your little nursery pot or whatever. And then if you still want to put it in a cute decorative one, you still can. But as the initial one, the little nursery pot or whatever, put it in a clear one and it'll help you to kind of keep an eye on the roots. Yeah, back to my original tip is whenever you do size up, you only want to size up about 1 to 2 inches, but no more than that. Because if you do, like I said, you'll run into a lot of issues with the pot retaining way too much moisture. It won't drain quick enough as quick as your roots need to anyway. And yeah, you'll most likely end up with root rot and it sucks. And it's depressing to throw out a plant. And yeah, don't do that. All right, now moving on to tip number 5. Okay, this one might sound a little weird, but stick with me because I got the perfect example, unfortunately. So the 5th one is that growth doesn't always mean happiness. Sometimes it means that your plant's struggling a little bit, looking for some light, probably looking for a moss pole. I have a plant that literally, specifically, probably, most likely needs a moss pole. I don't think I've ever seen a picture of this plant without a moss pole, and I have one without one. Yeah, I'll show you that in a second. So yeah, you'll understand. Actually, let me just get right to showing you. This is my little Melanochrysum. Yeah, she shouldn't really look this sad. I mean, she's not horrible, but she's not great either. I mean, obviously it could be worse, but obviously it could be better too. Okay, there's way too much spacing in between the leaves. These leaves are freaking tiny compared to her first one that she had whenever I bought her. And yeah, she's just not what she should look like. But I do have some moss poles on their way, and we're going to get her fixed up, and she's going to look beautiful in no time, I promise. Fingers crossed. Sometimes you need a moss pole because growing does not always mean thriving. And yeah, all right, moving on from that. Tip number 6 is that you really want to get plants that fit your personality, because if you're one of those people that you're just going to be obsessed with it all the time and you want to check on it all the time, you definitely don't want a plant that will die if you overwater it, because a lot of times the plants that are marketed to people as beginner plants, a lot of times beginners end up killing them because they're marketed to beginners because they're usually good for people that are going to get a plant and forget about it. So if you're one of those people that's going to be obsessed with it and want to water it all the time and check on it all the time, keep that in mind whenever you start getting plants, because if you get certain ones like a ZZ plant, for example, one of the main ones that beginners want to get because that's what they hear the most about whenever they're first looking them up. Yeah, if you overwater that thing, it's going to be dead by the end of the month, I promise you. I mean, maybe a few months, but point is, it's not going to last. So yeah, if you love routine, get thirstier plants. But if you're a little forgetful or pretty busy on the go, you travel a lot, get drought tolerant plants. Sorry, I just saw my shadow in the freaking window, or not shadow, my reflection in the window over here, the little crack in the window, and it freaked me out. I thought somebody was out there. Oh, anyway, moving on. All right, plant tip number 7. This is another one that hits a little close to home for me because, yeah, anyway, don't get so many plants right in the beginning. Get maybe 3 to 5. Don't get 20. I shit you not, I only got into plants because I went to my cousin's house for a weekend and fell in love with all of her plants. Long story short, I came home with like 4 or 5 new ones from her. So that was already my limit right there, but she just started an obsession. So then I went to all these different stores and brought home like 3 new plants from each one each new day. And every time I went to Walmart, I came home with 2 new little baby plants. So yeah, my collection grew quick. My anxiety grew quick. My stress, my gray hairs. Yeah, because I had so many plants that needed different things and I didn't know what the hell I was doing, and they were all starting to die on me, and I was like, damn it, I've already spent money on these things. Why the fuck did I do this? Because I don't know what I'm doing, and they're all showing me these signs that they're dying and I don't know how to fix it, basically. So yeah, don't do that. Another main reason I say to start with 3 to 5 is because it's really easy to learn their patterns when you have just a handful of them. Yeah, in the beginning, definitely just get a few. That way you can really get to know your plants and honestly, that way you don't get overwhelmed with them too. That's the big thing. I got so overwhelmed in the beginning, and let yourself fall in love with it first. Because the stress will come in time, I promise. Especially when you see your first spider bite. Actually, there's some that are worse, but I'm going to stop there. Okay, tip number 8 is that honestly, not every plant is for everybody, and it's best to accept that. What works for some people may not work for everybody, and honestly, a lot of it depends on where you live too. What's the climate like, the humidity like where you live? There's only so much you can control, and a plant depends on all of those things that you sometimes may or may not be able to completely control. So if you live in Florida and your plant does amazing, me over here in Arkansas may not be doing so good with that same plant, for example. So that's one thing to just take in mind keep in mind, because I used to get so upset with myself and wonder what I'm doing wrong. Wonder what I'm doing wrong because my plant sucks and is dying, and I'm doing everything that my cousin who lives a couple hours away is doing, and it's like I can't do anything right and it's still dying on me even though I take all of her advice. Well, again, there's only so much I can control, even though I've got the humidifiers, I've got the pebble trays, and I've got this and I've got that, and sometimes it just don't work out. Her begonia is beautiful and mine freaking sucks. So yeah, the sooner we accept that, the better it is. So tip number 9, this one's gonna be a little short because I just realized that I already pretty much covered this one in another bullet point that I had. So yeah, tip number 9 that I wrote down is I'm already going blank. Let me go ahead and look at my notes now. Tip number 9 was repotting is not a fix-all. You really only want to repot whenever it's starting to look root bound, and yeah, I talked about that whenever I said it's best to use clear pots. That way you can literally see the roots through there, and you'll know exactly when your plant is becoming root bound, and that way you'll prevent root rot and all the other things. So yeah, I already pretty much covered literally everything that I have on that whenever I was rambling earlier under the other one. So on to number 10. Tip number 10 is that your plants having drainage holes is a non-negotiable if they're in soil. I get away with it because mine are in leca. A lot of people disagree with that and think that it's a bad idea, but honestly, I haven't had any trouble with it so far. All of my plants are doing just fine. So if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But if your plants are in soil, they definitely have to have drainage holes, some way, shape, or form. I've literally taken a drill to some of mine in the beginning whenever I first started because I didn't know that, and as I said earlier, I would come home with a bag of just regular soil that I got at Walmart and throw a plant in it that didn't have drainage holes either, and it's stuck in suffocating plain ass soil. So yeah, that goes with another one that I talked about earlier too. So yeah, clear pot and then put it in a decorative pot if you want to, but don't make the same mistake I did where I would go to the store, buy this super cute planter that had no drainage holes in it at all and just throw some soil in. And also too, let me clarify this, even if I would have used the chunky soil, it still would have suffocated and created root rot because the water would have had nowhere to go. So yeah, no matter what kind of soil you're using, you definitely want to have drainage holes. That's very important. That's also a big way people get pests too, like fungus gnats and all kinds of stuff, because the moisture just sits there within the container. So yeah, you don't want that. So yeah, that's all I have on my list at the moment. I'm sure I'll think of more. And I really appreciate you guys watching. If you made it this far, let me know in the comments what's something you wish you would have known in the very beginning whenever you first got into plants. I'd love to know because I struggled a lot. Oh yeah, real quick before I go, I forgot I was going to show you guys my cat this time because last time I showed you my dog, and yeah, I can't leave her out. So this is Lilo. She's my baby. I've actually had her for about, I think she turns 10. Shit, she turns 10 this year, you guys. So yeah, I've had her, come here, they want to see you. I've had her for quite a while, and as you can see, she's a little plump. She's living her best life. She's a sweetheart. She is a little bit of one of those sassy cats, though. Like, if I pet her too long, she'll try to bite me, but she's 10. What can I expect? But we love her. Okay, say bye, Lilo. Mwah.